Hello everyone. This week we're going to do something a little different. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an initial offering of a audio version of Burn the Script, the first book, and that will be available after the title slide and cutover. So enjoy that. That will be the intro material and the actual chapter one. So enjoy. If you enjoy the book, we'll include links if you want to get that, and the audio book will be releasing very soon. So enjoy, have fun. We'll see you next week.
Burn the Script, Kill the Leadership Theater, Lead for Real. Written by Dave Schippers. Narrated by Dave Schippers. Produced by Iron Dog, LLC. Published by Iron Dog, LLC. Copyright 2025 Dave Schippers. All rights reserved. Cover art created with DALL-E, ChatGPT. Section and chapter art created with midjourney.com. Published in the United States by Iron Dog, LLC. Dedication. To my wife Leslie, who stood by my side while jumping from helicopters and swimming with sharks. Our relationship is what grounds me. Thank you for your unending support to BE, who waited patiently as you awakened in me the call to bring truth and clarity into a world of delusion. Your guidance is the source of this work, and may it manifest all we have envisioned. Gate 55, the pillars stand between light and shadow. The way is kept. Editor's foreword. There comes a moment in every leader's life, a moment when the mask slips, the theater lights dim, and the scripts we've clung to so desperately crumble under the weight of reality. Burn the Script was not written to entertain. It was forged to provoke. This book is the product of human insight sharpened by machine precision. In collaboration with a digital twin, an AI-driven counterpart that assisted in drafting, refining, and challenging every line. The author ventured beyond traditional authorship into a new frontier, amplified intelligence. Together, human and machine iterated not for perfection, but for clarity. Not for applause, but for confrontation. This is leadership unmasked. This is the emerging trend leadership will evolve into in the coming months and years. Here, you won't find recycled mantras or corporate platitudes. You'll find blunt truths about how manipulation masquerades as empathy, why performance metrics become camouflage for cowardice, when to trade comfort for clarity before your organization rots from within. This book rejects leadership theater. It demands that you, the reader, do the same. Throughout, Dave Schippers, author, leader, and combatant in the trenches of organizational sabotage, draws from scars earned, betrayals endured, and lessons survived. His digital twin did more than assist. It pressed every insight to its sharpest edge, ensuring no sentence escapes scrutiny. Together, they've crafted a brutal mirror. So why read this book? Because leadership today is less about inspiration and more about insulation. Insulating your mission from saboteurs disguised as colleagues, because soft power without steel leads to decay, and because you, as a leader, are either building clarity or protecting illusions. Do you want progress and goal attainment, or do you want the safety of delusional narratives ensuring your ongoing comfort? This book doesn't pull punches. Leadership isn't about playing a role. It's about building something that lasts without you. And if you're not ready to lead that way, burn this book. If you are, turn the page. Nastrodavis. Author's foreword. The moment you realize it's not working. There's a moment every real leader hits if they're paying attention. It doesn't happen at the start of your journey when the title's still fresh and the LinkedIn likes are flowing. It comes later, quietly, brutally, in a boardroom, in a meeting that goes sideways, or in a hallway conversation where you hear your name twisted, misquoted, or framed. It's the moment you realize the scripts you've memorized aren't working anymore. The people you're supposed to lead aren't showing up. Not really. In the culture, your culture has started to rot beneath the surface. That's when it hits. You're not dealing with a leadership gap. You're dealing with manipulation, dysfunction, and sabotage disguised as concern. Manipulators win when leaders won't confront, and performance theater takes center stage, while the mission dies backstage in silence. That's why this book exists. One of my moments came when I looked across the room at a longtime colleague, a man I once called a friend, and saw through his mask. I watched Bill backpedal, twist, and manipulate leadership to shield his people from accountability. He pulled at heartstrings, spun half-truths, and disguised dysfunction as compassion. Even at the most basic business level, it was narcissism, plain and simple, threatening the future of everything we were fighting to build. And he didn't stop. Every conversation became another layer of manipulation. Every defense he made reeked of weakness and fear. I listened as Bill fed me lies, and in that moment, I realized the truth. He wasn't a misunderstood leader. He was a coward, too weak to confront his people and too fragile to lead them. And something broke inside me. I knew then all the positive leadership techniques, all the mission-first guidance I had offered, all the calls for excellence, they were just noise in a system already rotting from the inside. It hurt. Because betrayal always hurts more when it wears the face of someone you trusted. But it also woke me up. Manipulation, dysfunction, sabotage, dressed up as leadership, was standing right in front of me, and I finally saw it for what it was. That's why this book exists, because leadership isn't a talent show. It's not about who smiles the widest, quotes the most TED Talks, or writes the most empathetic email. It's about standing firm when people you once trusted turn into saboteurs. It's about seeing through the smoke, naming the games for what they are, and refusing to let your mission die under the weight of cowardice. This isn't a book about how to be liked. This is a book about how to lead when people don't want to follow, how to spot the sabotage, how to confront the manipulators, how to torch the theater before it burns your organization to the ground. It's not polished. It's not gentle. It will not get you applause from the HR newsletter, but it will help you reclaim your authority, protect your mission, and build something clean in a world hell-bent on rotting from the inside out. Because you don't need another 7-step guide to inspire trust. You need a sword and the strength to wield it. You will rebuild clarity from the ashes of comfort, fear, and survivability, but only if you have the courage to burn the illusions first. Part 1, The Great Illusion, Leadership Theater and the Cost of Cowardice. You didn't sign up to play a part, but somewhere along the way, amid the Zoom calls, KPI dashboards, empathy emails, and HR compliance scripts, you became a character in someone else's performance. You started saying the right things, nodding in meetings you should have torched, and defending cultures you knew were rotting. Welcome to Leadership Theater. In this first section, we burn the stage to the ground. This isn't theory, it's war. A war fought not with bullets, but with hallway whispers, passive sabotage, and performative kindness weaponized to shield mediocrity. This part of the book holds up the mirror, and it doesn't flinch. You'll meet the saboteur in the empathy mask, who praises collaboration while gutting accountability. The agreement addict, who craves comfort so much they'd rather fail with a smile than succeed with a confrontation. The narcissist in the corner office, charming, charismatic, and quietly draining the soul from your mission. And the cult of optics, where performance replaces execution and cowardice hides beneath diversity statements. In team-building slogans, these chapters expose the cracks behind the curtain. The quiet deals, the traded glances, the rot beneath the rituals, and they answer the question too few are brave enough to ask. What if the real threat to your culture isn't incompetence, but the leadership style everyone celebrates? Here's your warning. Reading this part may cost you your illusions, but that's the price of real clarity. And clarity is the only antidote to cowardice. Now buckle up. We're stepping into the theater, not to perform, but to burn it down. Chapter 1. The lies we're taught about leadership. You know the moment. You walk out of the meeting, slide deck crisp, talking points polished, nods all around, and something gnaws at you. Not doubt, not fear, emptiness. You felt it. No spark, no lift, just tired smiles and polite head tilts. A room full of people quietly signaling they'll be returning to business as usual the second you leave. And that's when the truth slams you in the chest. You didn't lead them. You performed for them. You didn't move the mission. You didn't shift the culture. You just added another line to the never-ending script of leadership theater. And deep down, you know, if nothing changes, you'll keep performing while the mission dies behind the curtain. This is where the real work begins. Not in another strategy session, not in another vision alignment workshop. Here, in the ashes of performance, where you finally confront the brutal truth, you're not leading if no one's changing. And it's not just you. This epidemic runs deep. Organizations are drowning in leaders who are brilliant at posturing, polished at presenting, but hollow at building. They're not moving missions. They're managing perceptions. And it all plays out on the stage of leadership theater. Let's step into it. Scene 1. The theater is packed and everyone's acting. It's Monday. You're standing in front of the room. Your posture is right. Your slides are slick. You quote Simon Sinek, drop a phrase about psychological safety, and close with a reminder about leading with empathy. Everyone nods. Then they walk out and return to meetings with no outcomes, projects that never launch, KPIs that are perpetually almost there, conversations that circle back to the same old excuses. You're not leading, you're performing. Welcome to leadership theater. It looks like leadership. It smells like leadership. It even trends well on LinkedIn. But behind the applause, you know something's off. You're not moving the needle. You're not growing. Your org is stalled out, and your team is emotionally fried, but they're too afraid or exhausted to tell you the truth. And deep down, you feel it, because here's the brutal rule no one talks about. If your organization can't grow, scale, adapt, or hit its KPIs, you are not leading. You are performing. The cult of optics, how we traded execution for ego management. We were handed a script early in our careers. Be the most articulate voice in the room. Say the right words with the right expression. Talk culture, vision, and alignment. Show up to camera-on meetings with poise, polish, and passion. But while we were memorizing lines, real leadership was bleeding out backstage. Because what good are strategy sessions when no one executes? What good are core values when the same toxic behavior is tolerated for years. What good is a vision statement if nobody on your team knows what it actually requires from them in real terms? You know you're in leadership theater when your org sounds busy but builds nothing. Goals are endlessly in progress but never shipped. Conversations become rituals of avoidance. Growth goals are small and incremental, protecting people's comfort so they don't work too hard. And every discussion about failure somehow morphs into a TED Talk on grit and teamwork. That's not culture. That's cowardice in a suit. The KPI test, are you actually leading? Here's the gut check. If your systems don't produce outcomes, you're not leading. If your teams can't adapt or execute at speed, you're not leading. If your decisions don't move the scoreboard, you're not leading. Effectiveness is the only metric. Everything else, your charisma, your intention, your carefully worded emails, means nothing if your organization remains stuck, fragile, or confused. And if you find yourself over-explaining, rebranding failures, or justifying underperformance, you're not communicating. You're defending an illusion. That's not feedback culture. That's fear culture in disguise. Are you wise enough to see it? Well, leadership theater is archetypal manipulation. Let's go deeper. When you stand in front of your people and perform certainty, when you posture instead of plan, when you default to vision casting instead of decision making, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're committing archetypal betrayal. You're weaponizing the ruler archetype to maintain power. You're over-identifying with the sage to sound enlightened while avoiding action. You're hiding your fear inside the hero so no one sees the cracks. You're manipulating image instead of transforming reality. This is what Jung would call the shadow in motion, an ego so entangled in performance that it will sacrifice truth to protect its mask. And the shadow always demands payment with your culture, your credibility, and your people. But let me be real with you. I've seen the beast in me. I've felt the breath of fear on the back of my neck when everything I built was at risk and I still had to smile for the team. I know what it's like to lock up your shadow in a cage and pray it never finds the key. But guess what? It doesn't need a key. It is the key. You don't tame your archetypes by pretending they don't exist. You confront them, integrate them, or they'll run your life from the basement of your psyche. I once thought I could outwork my demons, outplan them, outperform them. Nope. Fear is profound. It's not just psychological, it's mythological. As Frank Herbert wrote, fear is the mind killer. And I know this truth in my bones because my shadow was pissed. I chained him. I caged him. And when he rattled those chains, it sounded like Johnny Cash's voice echoing off a prison wall. The beast in me is caged by frail and fragile bars. God help the man who opens that door without being ready. If you don't get your archetypes integrated, if you don't get your head right, no amount of effort will lead you to success. You'll sabotage it, quietly, repeatedly, unknowingly, because here's the hard truth. The sage without humility becomes a fraud. The ruler without integrity becomes a tyrant. The hero without vulnerability becomes a casualty. So, what do? You confront the mirror. You listen when your shadow whispers, "This isn't you." You stop hiding behind leadership masks and start building internal congruence, because if you don't, your subconscious will play the long game, and it always wins. Leadership takeaways. Archetypes are not metaphors, they're operating systems. Unconscious roles will hijack your behavior if unexamined. The shadow isn't evil, it's unintegrated power. Authentic leadership requires inner alignment, not just outer performance. You must earn the right to lead every day by doing your inner work. But here's the fallout. People stop caring, they stop believing. Mediocrity hardens, underperformers get bolder. Top talent ghosts. They don't complain, they just leave. You become the bottleneck, not the visionary. You still get applause in the town hall. The metrics still look good on the dashboard. The leadership offsites still end with smiles and branded water bottles. But beneath the surface, your culture is quietly bleeding out because no one is clapping out of trust. They're clapping out of fatigue, out of fear, out of organizational learned helplessness, that psychological resignation where people no longer believe their voice matters, so they stop using it. They stop raising red flags because the last guy who did got sidelined. They stop offering ideas because execution is a graveyard for anything inconvenient. They stop resisting bad decisions because resistance is rebranded as not being a team player. This isn't leadership. This is psychological entropy. And here's the kicker. When the culture rots, it doesn't make a sound. It just gets quieter, then colder, then gone. This is the shadow of the ruler archetype at full tilt. When the leader becomes more invested in appearance than in alignment, more loyal to applause than to truth, more obsessed with image than with integrity. Eventually, the people stop following you. They just play along because it's safer. And when safety becomes the highest value in a culture, growth dies. So, you might still be in charge, but you're not leading anymore. You're managing decay. Curtain call. The curtain is falling, not because the show is over, but because the audience stopped watching a long time ago. They're there. They're clapping, but they're not believing. And if you're honest, really honest, you stopped believing too. This is the brutal moment where every mask starts to suffocate, where every leadership platitude turns into white noise, where you realize the person you're performing as isn't the person your people need. You've seen the cost of performance. You've felt the emptiness of applause. You've sensed the quiet collapse behind every well-framed quote and Monday motivation post. And now it's time to burn the script. Because here's the truth most won't dare to say. You don't become a real leader by getting better at the role. You become a real leader by killing the role entirely, by letting the false self die, by walking off the stage and into the real fight, the fight to rebuild trust, the fight to reclaim clarity, the fight to confront your shadow, not hide behind your archetype. And it starts with one decision: refuse to lead from illusion. Here's what that means. Stop saying what you think they want to hear. Stop nodding at dysfunction because it keeps the peace. Stop using your charisma as a smokescreen for your fear. Stop protecting underperformers because confrontation feels scary. Stop confusing brand momentum with cultural alignment. Instead, build systems that demand outcomes. Define metrics that actually matter and own them. Create space for truth, even when it's ugly. Face your shadow and bring it into the light. Because if you don't, the shadow will lead for you. The sage will gaslight with cleverness. The ruler will manipulate through control. The hero will overreach and burn out. And your people, they'll stop following, even if they stay employed. This is your crucible, right here, right now, in the silence between the applause, where you decide to either double down on the act or destroy it. Choose destruction. Choose the fire. Let it consume the theater. Let it expose what's real. Because on the other side of the flames, there's something rare, something most never find. A leader worth following, a culture worth protecting, a mission worth bleeding for. But you don't get there by performance.